Paul, now, a lot of our viewers and listeners won't own stocks and shares. The majority of the British public don't own stocks and shares. But we should all care if financial markets, as we say in the lingo, correct suddenly, have a sudden drop, because that casts storm clouds off across all business, all economic activity.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. I mean, the performance of the stock market is a reflection of what people feel about the state of the global economy. And at the moment, as you quite rightly pointed out, global stock markets have been, particularly recently, have been under pressure. And the US one in particular for sort of most of the start.
4% in a day is a big drop.
That's a big move. It was a combination of effects, and sentiment is now getting hit pretty hard. But it was Powell's comments on Tuesday night.
So he's the head of the Federal Reserve,
Jerome Powell, that's right, was making comments that he would take the interest rate possibly above neutral, which actually said that they would have really contract the economy deliberately.
To really squeeze down on that inflation
rate. At the same time, you had a couple of big US consumer companies, retail companies, talking about margins. And I think this is the next concern that a lot of people are coming up with companies. You've talked about higher producer prices, input costs rising and everything else like this. Of course, if companies'
profit margins get squeezed
if they can't pass them on a lot. And that's a lot of what we're seeing at the present, is that the investors are getting concerned. Not only is the economy slowing, but some companies are talking about the fact that their margins are getting squeezed and that they can't put on prices. So analysts lower earnings forecasts, therefore you get stock markets start to weaken.
Catherine, we know that there's renewed lockdown across lots of China, obviously the world's second biggest economy. We know that the world's biggest economy, America, is now in a sharply rising interest rate cycle, which businesses don't like. It increases their borrowing costs. But I guess the question of how vulnerable financial markets are depends on how overvalued you think they are. To what extent do you think years of central banks printing money, so-called quantitative easing, has pumped up stock markets above where they really should be?
I was just going to say that. You've given me my lead in. I would like to say that this does matter to the average British person, because this is your pension fund. You may not be aware of it, you may not watch it.
If you're lucky enough to have a pension fund.
Yeah, well, if you've got a pension fund, they're probably invested in the stock market. So this is actually important to you. You definitely, as has been said by Paul, that the companies are not earning as much because their input costs are going up, so that they are going to lose some earning. But for a long time, I don't think the indexes or the company prices have really matched their earnings. I think we've seen incredibly high price per earning ratios. And
so shares have been blown up beyond a level justified by their profitability.
Yes. And
that's called a bubble, isn't it?
Well, to a degree. It had a lot to do with the way we did quantitative easing, where we were giving money not to the general public but to the banks. A lot of it went into asset pricing. So house prices went up and share prices went up.